Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 15th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China experienced an economic slowdown in July, influenced by tariffs, a struggling property market, evidenced by declining housing prices and construction slowdowns in cities like Hangzhou, reduced factory output, and slower retail sales. While exports increased, Chinese officials have cited U.S. protectionism, real estate sector issues, and policies hindering factory investments as contributing factors. Chinese liquefied natural gas, LNG, buyers are increasing imports to replenish inventories, capitalizing on lower prices after earlier delivery reductions. The bubble tea industry is confronting market saturation, rising costs, and intense price wars, testing the durability of various brands. Bridgewater Associates decreased its investments in U.S.-listed Chinese stocks, including Alibaba and Baidu, signaling a reduced market presence in the second quarter. Despite U.S. efforts to ease chip export controls, China is scrutinizing NVIDIA, indicating heightened distrust despite previous opposition to such restriction. Reduced spending by Chinese clients contributed to Applied Materials stock decline, which fell 14% due to weak guidance. Citing reduced demand from leading-edge customers, China is progressing in robotics, hosting the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, with companies like Unitary Robotics participating. To enhance consumer safety, China has implemented mandatory safety regulations for power banks, requiring China compulsory certification, CCC, for sales, distribution, or production after fire incidents. Shifting to the United States, President Trump stated there are no immediate plans to penalize China for purchasing Russian oil. This contrasts with the recent imposition of a 25% tariff on goods from India due to their continued imports of Russian oil. United States homeowners are increasingly adopting small-scale solar panels as a cost-effective alternative to rooftop installations. Wall Street concluded a positive week, although U.S. stocks retreated slightly from record highs, particularly within the technology sector. Foreign investment in U.S. Treasuries hit a record high in June, indicating sustained international demand, despite concerns about the dollar's value. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang visited Beijing and secured assurances from Washington regarding imminent export licenses for the company's H20 chips. Turning to China, Singapore's Temasek Holdings significantly reduced its stake in Alibaba Group Holding, decreasing it by 2/3 to 1.85 million shares in a quarter, ending in June, signaling a broader trend away from Chinese tech stocks toward consumer-focused companies amidst market volatility and escalating U.S.-China. In related news, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang's visit to Beijing resulted in a commitment from Washington to provide export licenses for the company's H20 chips. The World Trade Organization, headquartered on Lake Geneva's shores, faces renewed challenges as former US President Donald Trump aims to weaken its fundamental structure. In Australia, unrest has emerged following disruptions of Independence Day celebrations in Melbourne by a Khalistani group. Financial analysts are optimistic about K.K. Hutchison Holdings' updated ports deal, which encompasses 2 Panama Canal ports, even with potential delays factored in. India is poised for significant economic and defense policy shifts. Prime Minister Modi announced next-generation Goods and Services Tax (GST) reforms expected by Diwali 2025 to reduce the tax burden. Simultaneously, Mission Sudarshan Chakra was unveiled, reinforcing India's dedication to domestic defense production amid global tensions. A national sports policy aims to comprehensively develop sports within the country. Indian, IPO, are now seeing domestic institutional investors, mainly mutual funds, contributing over half of anchor book allocations, surpassing foreign portfolio investors. Mumbai commemorated India's 79th Independence Day with tricolour illumination. The London Stock Exchange, LSEG, expressed openness to dual-listing Indian companies. Against the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war, the United States saw President Trump and President Putin conclude a recent meeting by committing to future discussions, signaling possible advancements in U.S.-Russia relations. However, President Trump also remarked that tariffs levied on India concerning Russian oil imports constitute a big blow to Moscow. The world's attention is fixed on Russia as preparations intensify for the upcoming summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Alaska on August 15, 2025. The meeting is expected to address critical issues such as war, NATO, and economic cooperation, with investors keenly watching for potential changes in sanctions and tariffs. Foreign Minister Lavrov has refrained from predicting the summit's outcome, while reports from the SW suggest Russia aims to secure U.S. economic aid during the talks. Fueling further speculation, Reuters reported that Russia may be preparing to test a nuclear-powered missile ahead of the high-stakes meeting. Economically, Russia is set to sell its seized stake in gold producer UDC to a unit of Gazprom Bank, further reshaping its market landscape. A firm linked to an ally of Putin has acquired the country's largest brewer following Carlsberg's exit from Russia, according to FBK. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, managing over $913, is now focusing on profitability, curbing major investments in Saudi football. The PIF decreased its U.S. stock investments by $2 billion in the second quarter, selling its shares in Meta, PayPal, and Alibaba. Saudi Arabia sees itself as an attractive investment destination within emerging markets. The country's inflation dropped to 2.1% in July, a 5-month low. Agreements worth $121 were signed with Pakistan for collaborations in healthcare and energy. Regarding international affairs, Saudi Arabia has denounced Israel's actions regarding Palestinian land annexation and reaffirmed its support for a two-state solution. South Korea's President Lee is preparing for a visit to Philly shipyard, underscoring the nation's emphasis on shipbuilding. The government is pushing forward with cryptocurrency market reforms aimed at strengthening the sector. Discussions are underway between Circle executives and South Korean finance officials to expand the use of USDC within the country. In an effort to attract more global investment, securities settlement hours will be extended. Positive signs of economic recovery have been noted by the government. In international affairs, South Korea has voiced its disapproval of Japanese officials visiting the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. President Lee has affirmed his dedication to establishing military trust with North Korea. Furthermore, the dependability of the U.S. wheat supply chain was a major point of discussion during a recent visit by South Korean buyers. European markets presented a mixed picture, initially buoyed by strong earnings and later tempered by anxieties surrounding key summits. Investor sentiment fluctuated as they braced for discussions involving Ukraine, Trump, and Putin, impacting trading decisions. Before these summits, European shares had briefly touched a near 5-month peak, marking a second consecutive week of gains. Simultaneously, there's a noted uptick in European investors directing funds towards emerging market ETFs, signifying a shift in investment appetite. In other financial instruments, European bonds saw a downturn, a factor contributing to minor gains in short-term U.S. debt. Ukraine remains a focal point, as President Trump and Vladimir Putin held a summit in Alaska to discuss the ongoing war. While Trump indicated that no concrete agreement had been reached, He described the discussions as fruitful and affirmed his commitment to pursuing all possible paths toward a peaceful resolution. The summit's conclusion coincided with air raid sirens sounding in Ukraine, leading some analysts to speculate that the meeting could trigger considerable shifts affecting Ukraine, Europe, and the global landscape. Turning to the United Kingdom, the fast fashion giant Shein has seen a substantial 32% surge in sales, coinciding with considerations of a potential stock market listing. China's economic growth is causing concern in Asian markets. July's economic data revealed a slowdown. This is impacting stock market performance across the region. Meanwhile, Ethereum-linked equities are gaining traction. They are becoming a popular choice for Asian retail investors. Many see them as a potential replacement for Tesla. The United States is facing challenges in higher education. Asian universities are becoming more attractive to international students. Some perceive increased risk in studying in the U.S. due to policies enacted during the Trump administration. Japan's economy showed surprising resilience, with second quarter GDP exceeding forecasts at 0.3% growth quarter-over-quarter, driving key stock indexes to record highs. The overall economic growth reached 1%, a figure that initially buoyed markets. However, the yen weakened amidst these positive indicators. Simultaneously, disappointing economic data emerged from China, tempering market enthusiasm. Japan also responded to speculation about potential U.S. pressure on the Bank of Japan, BOE, to increase interest rates, firmly denying any such influence, although some market skepticism remains. Canada faces potential travel disruptions as Air Canada flight attendants decline arbitration, increasing the likelihood of a strike affecting numerous flights and passengers. Despite the potential labor unrest, the Toronto Stock Exchange, TSX, ended the week positively, even with a weaker performance on Friday. In related economic news, Canada's housing market defies seasonal expectations, maintaining momentum through the summer months. South Africa's currency gained ground as gold prices rose, and investors await key inflation figures. Nedbank sold its interest in Ecobank, securing $100 million from the transaction. The acquisition of Ecoca by Nedbank, valued at $94 million, has created new wealth within the fintech industry. Meanwhile, Toyota announced its intention to launch 3 electric vehicle models in South Africa by 2026, signaling a major move into the EV market. Ireland is facing economic headwinds due to President Trump's tariffs, which specifically target pharmaceutical companies such as Johnson & Johnson that have capitalized on the nation's advantageous tax environment. This situation casts a shadow over the established tax planning of producing name-brand medications within Ireland. After an initial export spike driven by tariff anticipation, Irish exports to the U.S. have since decreased. Africa is seeing significant developments, starting with Ayres Transcorp in Nigeria, aiming to double its oil production and expand operations continent-wide. Concurrently, Pan-African investor Alain Conchu has acquired control of Ecobank's parent company in a notable transaction. Egypt, meanwhile, is actively seeking investment opportunities in its potassium sector to boost economic growth. Turning to Asia, the Philippines and Australia have commenced joint military exercises in proximity to the South China Sea. In other diplomatic activities, President Marcos of the Philippines and South Korea's President Lee have forged an agreement to enhance trade and defense collaboration. In South Korea, a Pakistani national has been apprehended on suspicion of ties to Lashkar-e-Taiba. Meanwhile, Dunamu and MB Bank are launching Vietnam's inaugural licensed cryptocurrency exchange backed by the state. In Indonesia, President Prabowo Subianto is focused on lowering the deficit while maintaining social spending priorities. Tajikistan is planning to leverage Swiss expertise to boost its global tourism profile for both economic advancement and cultural promotion. Focusing on the Middle East, Iraq's power grid continues to struggle with corruption, mismanagement, and conflict, causing persistent outages despite significant financial investments. The UAE markets experienced a mixed trading period, with Dubai showing gains while Abu Dhabi faced declines amid volatile oil prices. Shifting to Europe, Switzerland is extending emergency aid to Montenegro as it battles ongoing wildfires. Poland and the UK are facing similar equity challenges. In Germany, the DAX share price index is closely monitored at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Across the Atlantic in the Americas, travelers from the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand can now expedite U.S. airport security using clear memberships via biometric identification. Raízen, a significant sugar producer in Brazil, has seen its stock price drop to penny stock levels. Colombia's economy has fallen short of nearly all forecasts for the second quarter. Mexico is actively reinforcing its role as a digital and industrial hub through Tech Week initiatives. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.